Hi, welcome to 2020 Tasty Treats with GourmetQuilter. We're doing 20 different foundation piece blocks in this segment of our Tasty Treats. So we've already done quite a few of them. This is a diagram of all of the blocks. There's information on the website on GourmetQuilter.com. If you're interested to have a look, you can register to receive the patterns. If you're receiving the patterns, you'll receive a download each day for 20 days because we're doing a block each day with a video each day. And we've already done 17 blocks, so we're actually on to block 18 this time, and we're doing a fun bird, so it kind of looks a bit like this. And this is the segments. There's 4 different segments that we make with these foundations in this particular block. The blocks vary with how many segments. And a segment allows us to have seams and things that come in, and then we can join it segment by segment. But it allows us still to have some accuracy with our piecing, with funny little shapes and angles and things. So I've actually gone ahead and stitched a couple of the segments. We just need to cut the segments of pattern out with a little bit of a surround so that we can trim on the dotted line. So this is the feet or leg segment, and I've already gone ahead and I've made that one there because it's really just sewing some strips on. And I've also done this one here, which is the beak. But it goes around the other way, of course, because everything is mirror image. So it's a little bit of a working back to front process. However, I'm quite sure we can do it. So because I've already made 2 of the 4 segments, and I've started on a 3rd segment. This is the one that has has the little tail in it. It doesn't really look like a tail, but this little small piece here is the tail, and it's going to be this bright blue. So my bird is kind of a funky, fun bird. It's not necessarily super realistic, and especially not with colours. So I've gone ahead and I've joined my piece 1 on and piece 2, but now we've got this quite large piece here, piece number 3. So I just thought I'd show you that. So I'm going to fold it along the line that I'm going to stitch along here, so that when that folds forward, that area that we've folded forward here is the area that we're trying to cover with fabric. So we have to make sure that there's enough fabric behind that, and it was a little bit wider than some of the pieces, so I've got a wider piece of fabric than I have been using mostly. And we can lay it down on the fabric so that that piece is covered, and then we can open it back out again and we can stitch along there. It all kind of looks a little bit weird, but that will allow that piece to then, once it's stitched, to flip back up again. So by folding it forward you can see where it's going to go, and that helps you with the positioning. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch along that line right from the seam allowance right out to the other seam allowance area. When they're bigger pieces like this, you need to be doubly sure that you're going to have enough fabric. Sometimes the smaller ones make it just because. So when I flip that around now, you can see that that is big enough to go behind the whole pattern piece. So what I want to do now is not flip it just yet, but fold back the paper along the stitching line that I've just done, and then I can trim away all this excess fabric here, and then I can fold that out and press it, and then I can trim up the whole segment. So I'm just going to press that right along that stitching line, and that's big enough for my piece of pattern, so that's really good news. And so I can go ahead and trim that. I might do that in a minute, because I'll just show you while I'm here piecing the body piece. So on the bird's body we've got, it looks quite confusing when you see it just in the lines, I realise. So it's this larger segment here that we're doing with the green and the orangey colour on it. Only that I'm changing the colours, of course. So I've already placed this is my main colour where the green was on the picture, and I've just used a little bit of a glue just to hold it on the piece of paper initially, because it's quite large and I didn't want it flopping around. I didn't want to use pins. And we've got to do some tiny little triangles on the corner here of the background fabric just to give it a little bit of shape. So I've already put a couple of those in place as well. But then there's this long wedge shaped piece B3 here, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on. So when we're putting on pieces like that, I can fold it along the line I'm going to stitch. So that's along this line here. bring the fabric forward that's sitting there as well, and I can place that right sides together with my fabric, make sure that it's going to cover everything by just having a quick check here, and it's looking pretty good. That's going to flip back, so I can go ahead and stitch that line up there. So that's going to press back fine. So I'm going to now just, I had previously stitched into this little section here, so I just need to pull that stitching away from the paper there, and maybe up here as well, so that I can fold back my pattern along the line I've just stitched, so that I can trim up my seam allowance there. So you can trim anything that's kind of out there. Then I can press that and now I've got another piece to go on here. I've already put piece 4 on, so it's actually piece 5 that goes on next up the top there. I kind of jumped ahead and put an extra piece in ahead of the plan. Oh no. So piece 5 just gets stitched along here, so there's plenty there to stitch to. And same thing, I'm going to pull that paper away from any stitching, fold down against the stitching line I've just made, and just trim away that excess there. And then press that. This looks very unlike a bird at this stage, I have to admit. Isn't patchwork an amazing thing? So there's just one more piece to go on now, this large triangle at the back here, but pretty straightforward because it's just a straight line. But just to make sure, we can just fold along there and pop that along there to make sure that we've got enough fabric and we've got plenty there that's going to flip around. So I can just stitch along there, and we've done all the piecing. Then we have to do some trimming. Okay, so I'm going to fold back my paper along my stitching line, trim my seam, I'm going to press it. So we're using fabrics a little bit larger than our shapes and trimming them down. It may seem a little wasteful, but it does allow us to do some amazing shapes and things as well. And sometimes you get pieces that you can trim off that you could use again in another block, so it's not entirely wasted. But there are only generally smaller pieces of fabric, so it's not really a problem. I'm just trimming on the dotted line at the moment because that's at the edge, which will give us a seam allowance with that as well. And there's just a couple of little corners to trim up, that little fiddly bits up here that just help us put it together better. And so there's our shape. I could trim up this one, we can have a little look and work out how we're going to put this block together. This fun little bird. This is one of those things that kind of gets easier the more you do, because you get used to the working back to front and on the angles and things like that. And I'm just going to pop a dab of glue on that because that just wants to flop open, and that will just possibly move when I'm joining the segments together, which won't be helpful. So our segments don't all have straight grain on the seam lines, so just be aware of that, particularly when we take the papers out and you've just got the block left. So that is the bird's tail that's going to come up there. That is the bird's beak, which is going to join into his body, even though it doesn't look like it, and that are the legs. So what we need to do is join this to this and this, put the three together, and then the legs will fit across the bottom of that. So I'll go ahead and do that and show you the block when it's all together. So I've sewn the three segments together across here, and then I've added the legs. When I did these segments, I've pressed those seams open, and then I'm going to press this seam open as well. I did remove some of the paper behind the seam area where these seams occur, and I made this seam putting the legs on because I thought that would be better not to have too much paper tucked in there. We've got to pull these papers out sometime. So there's our little fun bird. But I am thinking that he's just a little bit lost because he can't quite see where he's going. So I'm going to give him a little eye. So I'm just going to find a little pin here. So that, how I usually mark an eye, I'm going to use a marking pen, a permanent marking pen. It's a micro Pigma pen, which is permanent on fabric. You might want to embroider it, you might want to machine stitch it, you might not want to give him an eye. Poor thing. So what I usually do is I perhaps pop a pin in where I think the eye might go. A black pin would be better, but I don't have one here. We have a green eye today. I'm going to give him a black eye though. And I think that's probably a fairly good position for an eye. I'm happy enough with that. So by putting the pin in, I've now got a pin mark in my fabric if I'm quick. And I can just use my pen to just mark a little oval with the pen there. If you want to give him more markings, if he needs eyelashes or he needs a bigger eye, perhaps, or you could, as I said, mark it in some other way. But I'm very happy with my little bird that he can now see. So I'm going to put him up here with our other blocks. This is block number 18. Oh, there's only 2 more spaces and then we'll have all 20 of our blocks done. This is pretty exciting. So I hope you're enjoying these foundation blocks. I'm enjoying them. I think they're looking really good when you see them all together, but they could all be used separately. I don't know what you're going to use yours for. I hope you're going to show me. They could be put in just as separate little blocks. They could be, as I said, all together in a quilt. Who knows where they're going to end up. But that was it for block 18. Thank you. Please look at GourmetQuilter.com for more information, and I'll see you again with foundation piece block number 19.